like to speak about an important lesson that we learn in Parshat Noach from the commandment that Noach was given to bring the animals into the teva. Okay, so we see he was commanded to bring the tahor animals, the animals that were later on were going to be kosher animals. He was told to bring animals that were not tahor, that were not kosher animals, 7 from the ones that were tahor, right? It says in the Torah, Tikach shiva ish v'ishto, and then when it came to the ones that were not tahor, he was told shnayim balat el Noach el teva. Okay, and what's interesting is that there's a difference between how the animals came to the teva. Okay, when it came to the kosher animals, so Noach was told that he has to go out and he has to go get them. Okay, and the lashon of the Torah was tikach lecha, you have to take them for yourself. And yet when it came to the not kosher animals, those animals, the Torah tells us shnayim ba'u el teva, that they came on their own. And the question is, why is there a difference between the different types of animals? The answer lies in the difference between what the animals were used for. Okay, meaning what was the reason the animals were brought into the teva. So all the animals were brought into the teva for the reason that they should continue, these species should continue after the mabul, after the flood. But in addition to that, okay, when it came to the tahor animals, the kosher animals, they served another purpose after the mabul. And that is that Noach took from these kosher animals, these tahor animals, and he used them to bring karbanos after the mabul, which we'll talk about shortly. So the question is, because of that difference, because of what these animals were going to be used for, why did it make a difference on how they came into the teva? Why did Daf and Noach have to go out and get the tahor animals, whereas the not tahor animals, they came on their own? So I'd like to present a scenario to help us understand why there was a difference. Okay, imagine the following. Imagine I'm a 15-year-old girl and my mother has a birthday coming up. And I'd like to be able to give her a gift for her birthday, a surprise. And I go to her, okay, well I have 2 options. Okay, the first one is that I go to her and I say to her, Mom, I need a little bit of extra spending money this week. And I take my mother's money and I go out and I buy her a gift for her birthday. Now it's very thoughtful of me that I don't want to forget her birthday, but how meaningful is a gift like that? Okay, there was no effort that went into it. I asked my mother for her money. I used her money, went out and bought a gift. That was saving, nothing that was any sweat off my back. It doesn't really show that much. The scenario number 2 would be if my mother's birthday is coming up. Okay, and already for a couple of months, I'm starting to put money away, I babysit, I work hard to earn that money, and instead of using it for myself, I put it on the side, and I see something that I know my mother would really appreciate. Some thought goes into what type of gift also I want to give to my mother, and then I present my mother on her birthday with a gift. How much more meaningful is that gift? Because there was effort that went into it. Okay, the understanding of Noach having to go out and getting the tahor animals is that if these animals were going to be used for a karban, right, a karban from lashon karov, to come closer to Hashem, how meaningful would it be if Noach didn't put any effort into it? So therefore, first of all, we have the effort on the teva, taking care of the animals, but that's all the animals. In addition, the tahor animals, he had to go through the tircha, he had to go through the process of sweating, okay, of working hard to bring these animals into the teva, so that the whole process of that karban came with his effort. We see that in general, okay, when it comes to putting in, effort, okay, into a relationship, okay, in human relationships, okay, so the relationships are that much more meaningful. Not just that the person that we do something for is appreciative of what we do, and because of their akar satov, because they recognize the good, they come to love us more. The person themselves, the more they put into a human relationship, the more they feel closer to the person, okay? And that applies to the scenario with the daughter who saves money to give her mother a gift. She feels closer to her mother after she goes through all that effort. It's true if they have a coworker who's not feeling well. And Erev Shabbos, I know she's been in bed for a week, and I send over a beautiful Shabbos Suda, right? So not only does she feel closer to me because she appreciates what I did for her, but I end up bonding as a result of that giving. Okay, we learn what does it mean to develop a relationship with Hashem from the human relationships that we have. Okay, that's why the Sefer Shir Shirim is written as a parable, as a mashal of a human relationship, a human loving relationship, so that we can understand what does it mean to love Hashem. So when it comes to my relationship with Hashem, there has to be effort put into that. Okay, and that's why Noach has to put that effort into gathering those animals before the mabul. We see a similar idea in Sefer Shmuel. Okay, when there was a magefa at the end of Sefer Shmuel Bet, okay, this is the last parak, where there were 24,000 members of Klal Yisrael who were killed in a plague in Mageva. And it stemmed from when David counted the nation. And afterwards, the Navi, God, comes to David and commands him to do the following to stop the Mageva, to stop the plague. He says to him, you have to go to the land of Aravna Melchivusi, and you have to build a Mizbeach in his land, and you have to bring korbanos there, and that's going to stop the Mageva, to stop the plague. Okay, and we see David does this, and he comes to that land, to the Goreh, okay, to the place where he stored the grain, and he says to he sees Aravna sees the king coming, and he goes to greet him. He says, "What can I do for the king?" Okay, and he says, "I'd like to purchase your land and build a mizbeach and bring korbanos to my God." And Rama says to him, the king, I'm willing to give you whatever you want. Take whatever you want. Here's animals, here's wood, here's tools. Whatever you want. I'm very happy if the king would take whatever he wants. And the answer that David says to Aravna is, "Lo, I don't want to take anything from you. Ki kano eknem otcha. I want to buy it. B'mechir, with a price. V'lo e'aleh la'Hashem Elokai olot chinam. How can I bring sacrifices to my God for free? Meaning, if I didn't put any effort into acquiring this land and paying for this land and building this mizbeach and the animals, paying for the animals, I can't now bring a sacrifice to my God if there was actually absolutely no meaning behind it." And he ends up purchasing this land. This is actually the time when we acquired the land where Har Bayis was. Okay, this was the territory of Ravna, is where the Beis Hamikdash was built. And it's interesting that there's 3 places that are actually recorded in the Torah that they were purchased, in addition to the promise of Eretz Yisrael in general, to the descendants of Avram Avinu. Okay, and this is one of the places that we fight the most. Okay, over this territory of whose it belongs to. There's Har Bayis, there's Shem, and there's Mars Machpelah Hebron, and all 3 of them is recorded in the Torah that these were specifically purchased. Okay, so this is when David acquires the land for the Beis Hamikdash, and he says, "I don't want to do anything for free. I have to put effort into my relationship with Hashem." After the Mabul, we see that Noach actually does bring the korbanos, and we see the reaction of Hashem to these korbanos. We see very clearly, the way that Hashem receives, those korbanos, the effort went into them. And the Torah says the following wording to describe Hashem's reaction to the korbanos. The Torah tells us, "Vayarach Hashem et reach hanichoach." Hashem smells the pleasant smell of the korbanos, and that's when Hashem promises that He will not destroy the world again. Okay, so the statement is being made is because of these karbanos, because these karbanos were so pleasing to Hashem, the world is now going to be rebuilt through the karbanos. Okay, and what comes to mind when I think of that pasuk in the Torah is that the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that tells us that there are 3 foundations to the world. Okay, Torah, Avoda, Gemilut Chasadim. Torah, Avoda means karbanos, the service of Hashem, which today we have tefillah instead, and Gemilut Chasadim, the giving that we do between people, the chesed that we do for other people. Those are 3 foundations. So we're told that that Avoda, karbanos, is a solid foundation of the world, and the world was rebuilt after the Mabul through the way Hashem was so pleased with the karbanos that were brought. And the question is, why are karbanos so pleasing to Hashem? Again, we see this if we look at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra at the Inyan of the karbanos that were taught in Parsha Vayikra and Sav. So we see that lashon of reach nichoach, that karbanos are so pleasing. They smell so beautiful before Hashem, they're so pleasing to Hashem. We see that line, that lashon, that wording used other times. And we also see throughout the commandments of karbanos, we see how much karbanos are pleasing before Hashem. Okay, and yet there are plenty of mitzvahs that Hashem gets nachas when we do them. But we don't see that the Torah says, you know what, honor your parents and it's going to be pleasant before me. Okay, or v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, love your fellow man, and it's going to be pleasing before me. Why specifically karbanos does Hashem say, this is beautiful before me? Okay, this is pleasant smelling before me. It's not just a matter that karbanos has a smell, right? There's more than that Hashem is specifically saying, this is something that's so pleasing before me when you bring karbanos. Okay, another question I want to present, is that when we're told to bring karbanos, the Torah specifically says that you have to have kavanah. You have to have intention when you bring karbanos. Okay, you can't just, there are mitzvahs that we could do that are not performed in the best way possible if we do it this way, but if we didn't have kavanah, if we didn't have intention, we just went through the motions and did it in a robot-like way, we would be yotzei. We would have fulfilled our commandments, even though it would be a lot nicer if we really had intention, to do the mitzvah, not just to go through the motions of doing it. Well, when it comes to karbanos, if we don't have the intention to bring it, it's called the ritzonchem tizbacho. You have to have ratzon, you have to have will, you have to have the desire to want to bring it, then the karban is not accurate. Okay, so why is that so? And another question we can ask, when Torah talks about Adam ki yakriv mikem karban, a man, when he brings a sacrifice, so the wording is very unusual. It says Adam, man, ki yakriv mikem, when he sacrifices from you, karban. Shouldn't it be Adam mikem ki yakriv, a man from among you, when he sacrifices, and then the Torah tells us what we have to sacrifice. Why is that word mikem, from you, out of place? Okay, so in order to answer these questions, I want to take a look at a Rebbetzin on karbanos, where he talks about how can we understand how karbanos work. Okay, it says obviously we can't always understand the ways of Hashem. Okay, but if we delve a little bit into understanding what a karban accomplishes, we can get a little bit of insight into why karbanos are so pleasing for Hashem. Okay, so it says the Rudman, when a person does an action, their actions involve three components. There's the thought that I want to do something. There's the speech that I say I'm going to do it, and then there's the actual action. When the action I'm doing is an avera, I transgress something, and I want to bring a karban to atone for what I did. So if there's three components to the action of that avera, I have to do, if I want to get atonement for it, I have to counteract those three components. So to counteract the action, I have to do something with a karban, which is called smicha. I have to place my hands on that animal, as a symbolic action with my hands to counteract the action of doing that sin that I did. To counteract the speech that I said I'm going to do an avera, so I have to say vidui, I have to say confession, I have to say what it is that I do wrong, and express my remorse in what I said I was going to do. And what about to counteract the thought of doing an avera? So that I have to take the inner organs of the animal, the kerev and the klayot, the inner organs that represents the seed of the heart, the ratzon, the will, and the taiva, the desire to want to do something wrong, and I have to now take these inner parts of the animal to represent the seed of desire and will, and I have to now sacrifice those parts of the animal. In addition, I also take the blood of the animal and I sprinkle the kohen takes the blood and sprinkles the blood on his back. And what that represents is that a person has that remorse, and they're saying when they bring their karban to Hashem, they're saying, I know Hashem, you don't want a person to die from their sin. That's not what Hashem wants. He doesn't want Mesiras Guf. Hashem wants Mesiras Nefesh. He wants us to give of ourselves. And Hashem in His Chesed gives us the ability to do tshuva when I make a mistake. Along with that comes the karbanos that I could do. I could bring the karban chatat, as part of my remorse. And when the blood is sprinkled on his back, it's saying, Hashem, thank you for giving me the ability to bring the blood of the animal in exchange for my blood that really should have died because of what I did. But in your mercy, you allow me to bring the animal instead of me. And as the Ramban describes, it's called nefesh tachat nefesh, that Hashem allows us to bring the nefesh of the animal, the body of the animal, instead of my nefesh, my soul, that sins. Because Hashem doesn't want that a person should die in their sins. Hashem wants us to do tshuva and correct what we did wrong. So technically, if I didn't have that ratzon, if I didn't have that will, that desire to want to do the karban, then it wouldn't work. Because the whole idea is that I'm thinking, Hashem, my will is to correct what I'm doing, and allow me to have that chance to be able to atone for my sins through the karbanos. And therefore, when it says Adam ki yakriv mikem, what the Torah is telling us, it has to be mikem, it has to be from you. You have to feel that desire, to want to come closer to Hashem, to that desire to want to atone for what you did, and there has to be that thought. And this is so pleasing for Hashem. Why? Because this is what Hashem wants. Hashem's goal through the Torah is that we come closer to Him. Each mitzvah that we do is a means towards coming to closer to Hashem. As the Torah tells us, uboted bak, that we're supposed to cling to Hashem. Now, the mitzvahs are not guaranteed to bring us closer to Hashem, because if a person does a mitzvah without having any intention and any inner thought and any real thought process when they do the mitzvah, it might not work to bring a person closer. The one time that he can't fulfill the commandment unless he has that ratzon, unless he has that desire, is karbanos. So karbanos is guaranteed to accomplish that task of uboted bak, of clinging to Hashem. And that's why it is so pleasing before Hashem, and why the Torah specifically says it's a reach nichoach LaHashem. It's so pleasing when Hashem sees that person bring the karban, and the karban is now an expression of mesiras nefesh, of dedication on the person's part to Hashem, and a closeness to Hashem. Then it pleases Hashem, because that's what Hashem wants us to be able to do through His mitzvahs. To enable a person to come to that state, okay, so that's why in Beis Mikdash we had the Leviim would sing beautifully in the Beis Mikdash, and song was a means for a person to come closer to Hashem through being inspired by that beautiful singing of the Leviim. Okay, so that by the time the person would bring the karbanos, if he didn't feel that ratzon, okay, that will, that desire to come closer to Hashem, or that remorse, through that singing, it would inspire him to be able to get to that point. I want to just end with sharing a specific example of a type of karban that clearly shows us how through karbanos a person is coming closer to Hashem. Okay, I want to explain specifically the type of karban called a karban mincha. Karban mincha was a karban that a poor person brought. And when the Torah talks about this type of a karban, the wording used in the Torah is not adam ki yakriv, which is the wording used for all the other karbanos, but the wording is v'nefesh ki takriv karban mincha LaHashem. A soul, when he sacrifices the karban mincha, this offering to Hashem. And the question is, why does it say adam, like every other karban? Right? Why does it say nefesh? So Rashi says that if this poor person brings this karban, it's considered as if he gave me his soul. So why? Why is it so significant when a poor person brings his karban that Hashem says it's as if he brought his soul? One question. The second question is, the pasuk goes on to tell us, what does the poor person bring? The poor person brings solet, it's coarse flour. He pours on it shemen. Okay, and where do we get shemen from? Shemen comes from olives. And he also puts lavona, which is a type of spice, okay, together with his karban. And the question is, where does the poor person get this from? It's expensive, right? If he doesn't bring an animal like a baby bird, a yonah, because it's too expensive, then how does he have the money to be able to bring these solets, these flour, the oil that comes from olives, and the lavona, the spice? Okay, that's another question. And the other question we can ask, okay, is if we explain that karbanos is nefesh tachat nefesh, that you bring the soul of an animal in exchange for your soul, and you show Hashem, I have remorse, I'm giving you a moser nefesh, but not moser guf, because you don't want me to give my life, you want me to be able to atone for my sins and bring the animal instead. There's no animal here, right? We're talking about flour, oil, and spice. So where is there a nefesh tachat nefesh? There's no animal soul that can be brought instead of his own soul. So the understanding is the following, okay? Where does the poor person get these ingredients from? So one of the commandments we're commanded, okay, is that when we have a person has a field, they have to leave part of their field for poor people. Okay, for example, there's a mitzvah called peah, where you leave a corner of your field designated for the poor people, and they can come gather it during the time of the harvest. In addition, if bundles of wheat would drop, okay, less than a certain amount, okay, if you forgot to take some certain amount of your bundles with you, you can't now pick it up, you have to leave that for the poor person. So solet, a poor person would get by going to gather the portions of the field that he's entitled to because he's poor. That's where he has it from. Whereas getting a yonah, he wouldn't be able to have the means to be able to buy a bird, even if it's such a young bird and it's not that expensive. But the other things he gets because it's the presents to the poor people. And the lavona, the spice, is something that grew wildly in the fields. And when something grows wild, it doesn't belong to anybody. He could take as much of it as he wants. It's called hefker. It's free for anybody to take. Why is it such mesiras nefesh for him to give it? And that's why the Torah says nefesh ki takriv, because realize this, okay, when a poor person goes to a field and he gathers the wheat or whatever other produce that he's entitled to gather, that's his food for a half a year or for a year. And if he now says, you know what, I'm taking a part of the food that's supposed to be from my mouth, from my family's mouth, and I'm saying no. Part of this I want to, not eat and not feed my family with because I want so badly to bring a karban to Hashem. That's literally mesiras nefesh, to be able to do such a thing. It's not like he has so much. When he has so little and yet he's saying, no, but I have enough, I want to be able to give a karban to Hashem. Can you imagine what a dedication that is to Hashem? What a desire to want to please Hashem, come closer to Hashem this poor person is exhibiting when he brings this karban. And that's why the Torah uses the lashon nefesh ki takriv, when a soul sacrifices, because he's literally bringing his own soul. And we can add to this, okay, that if that's what this poor person is doing, then he doesn't need to have an animal instead of his own, right, instead of his soul, because he doesn't need that. He doesn't need nefesh tachat nefesh because he's bringing literally his own nefesh.